Today I'm joined by Ben Sunderland. Ben's the managing director of the internet retailer, and they provide products and services to their customers fast and at great prices. So welcome, Ben.
Good afternoon. Hi.
Yeah, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So, Ben, tell us a little bit more about the internet retailer and actually what you do.
So the internet retailer was born out of an idea in 2008. I was renovating my first property with my wife, and 17 years ago, Screwfix didn't really exist from an e-commerce marketplace. So I was driven by my need for product to put it online.
Okay.
So I did that. I started in the switches and sockets world and moved into anything sort of lighting and that sort of genre. And it's evolved sort of organically from that initial request of my own, really, that I couldn't get X, Y, and Z at my fingertips. And was really part of an e-commerce drive, probably 2010 to 2016, 2017, where not everyone was really that comfortable online. Certainly before COVID, and obviously everyone went on COVID in 2020 to 2022, pretty much. But yeah, we were. I suppose consider myself to be a little bit of an early adopter in certain things. So yeah, certainly that's where the business stemmed from.
Okay, so you saw that opportunity at that time. So, and if I understand this correctly, you source products from various sort of retailers, wholesalers, etc., and then you market those online. Is that how it works?
That's how it started, yeah, for sure. So we initially dealt with lots of UK and European companies in the lighting sector, and we essentially there's a lot is happening now in terms of B&Q Marketplace, other marketplaces, effectively drop shipped their products to our customers on our e-commerce platforms. That subsequently has evolved through a journey to the Far East and our own products, where we do the same, but we effectively do it for ourselves now.
Okay. So do you manufacture your own products as well then, or
Yeah, we
white
have an
label?
assembly line in Sussex, and we also source a range of sort of home and garden products.
Great. Okay. Brilliant. And okay, so let's take a step back to when you set the business up. I think what did you mention there, about 17 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, had being a business owner been something that you'd always wanted to do, because you were originally in accounting, weren't you, Ben?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a strange time juncture, I suppose. Our youngest was on the way. I just qualified an accountant and um, was ready to sort of take the next route through that world, and subsequently handed in my notice. Just counting other people's money just wasn't really a to-do list, to be honest. And I'd say 17 years on, I'm almost now unemployable in terms of working for someone. But yeah, and it was an interesting juncture, and the timing was not right, as it often isn't. But yeah, I mean, it led to, at the time, an interesting Christmas period where I actually started selling some watches, relatively high-end Swiss watches that I was sourcing for people. And that was the first Christmas I had sort of making my own money, just buying and selling. So yeah, it set me up well, though, in certainly in a business sense, so that I had that background behind me.
Yeah. So the things that you sort of, your experiences and what you learned from doing being an accountant, becoming a qualified accountant, you can now use some of that in your business aspects. Is that so? Have I understood that correctly?
Correct, yeah. And there's certainly nowadays, I would say accounting is more business development, learning about a business, than it is just about the numbers. And I was doing that for myself 17 years ago, I was actually already trading at that point myself. So, I didn't really, wasn't from a starting point. I had probably a year or two e-commerce experience running in parallel as I was sort of qualifying, then exiting at the time.
Okay, so you worked on being an accountant, sort of became qualified, realised that actually you'd rather count your own money than other people's. As you say, this opportunity or this experience you had when you were renovating a property, you spotted an opportunity in the market and went, okay, let's go for this. Let's do it. So
Correct, yeah. And it was, yeah, at that point, coding my own website from scratch. There wasn't Spotify or any other platforms available. It was a case of learning a little bit about some coding and actually writing the website myself.
so you had to, so there were some things that you had to learn there as well in terms of yeah, like even though you had that good knowledge and experience from your, being an accountant, there were some things that you went, well, actually, I need to learn these things, coding, how to create a website. And what would
Yeah.
you say was your biggest challenge that you faced being a,
At the start or during or
well, let's
I think probably
let's do both. Let's go with at the start. What was the biggest challenge you faced at the start?
um, I suppose at the start there is probably so much to learn,
Mhm.
I would say, and your uptake has got to be pretty quick
Mhm.
in as you go on to sort of employing people, HR stuff, importing your products, regulation of that,
Mm.
safety stuff. There's the upward curve is really, really quick.
Yeah.
So I suppose in a magical world, 17 years on or 15 years on, the speed at which you do things has to be really, really quick because it can save you time and money. So the faster you can learn things and the faster you can own a project, a topic, an understanding of something, then I think it makes it a lot easier for you,
Yeah. So
I would
that,
say.
yeah, that pace of learning and I guess in the first place, understanding, well, what are the things you need to learn to move you forward? And okay, what's the quickest way of learning those things? Because right, you mentioned it there about employing people. Because right, it's not always the case that right at the beginning you can surround yourself by other people that can do it because you may not have the cash resources to employ, that many people at the initial stages. So actually, it is about learning some things yourself to build it until such time as you can start to recruit and get people to take on those other things as well. Because you've grown substantially over the years. I mean, roughly, how many employees do you have at the moment, Ben?
Maximum time, we've been up to sort of 24 employees.
Yeah. So you've sort of gone through that growth period, and so as you went through that growth period and bringing on more employees and the business sort of growing, what would you say the biggest challenge was that you experienced going through that?
That's a good question. That's complicated and riddled with layers of all kinds of things. In during the COVID period, we did a warehouse move, and then subsequently now use the ability of Amazon FBA to bypass our UK warehousing. So in the space of 3 years, our logistical movements and our warehousing needs have literally gone up and down
Right.
and changed dramatically.
So for those
It
those
probably
people
is
on the
actually.
those people on the call that aren't familiar with Amazon FBA, tell us a little bit about that, Ben.
So Amazon fulfilled by Amazon FBA,
Yeah.
different to FBM, which is fulfilled by merchant,
Mhm.
where the seller would sell the product themselves. This means that you deliver the goods to Amazon's fulfillment centers and warehouses. And when someone swipes on Amazon, that product is then magically delivered through the brown box of Amazon to said housework locker location. Um, And even up to COVID, we were really working on gearing up for stocks to do that. No products that aren't too big, if I'm honest, because the bigger the products, the more complex that becomes and the bigger the headache it does become for volumetrics and storage. So generally speaking, smaller products. Um, but there is now obviously the Chinese and Far East have been doing it for a while with some of their products, especially now Temu is. But Amazon has the ability internally to send goods from the factory to Amazon UK and Europe. And to do that, it's all within the portal, and the shipping costs aren't that much different to doing it yourself. And the reality is you can run that from your laptop. So you can work from your mobile phone and your laptop, and you can have, I know this summer, you could have a container full of sun loungers arriving on Amazon, and do everything you need to from a mobile phone and a laptop that without having a UK warehousing at all, which from a cost perspective in the UK is quite substantial in terms of employees, warehousing cost, business rates, you name it, that now can be bypassed. So in answer to your previous question, probably that's the biggest learning curve, is that there's always a way to do something differently. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. And yeah, I'd like to maybe test things and learn a little bit faster, I suppose, and do things maybe at A/B testing or something like that that would allow you to test it once and then go down another route once you realise the other route is better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does definitely. Look, and I think it reminds me of I think it was Stephen Bartlett that says fail fast, fail faster than your competition. Because if you fail faster, you can learn from that and then move on quicker. So it reminds me of that phrase, and like what you said there about A/B testing. Right, try it this way. That didn't work. Right, okay. Foul may be a strong word, but you get the point. But I think that the other key thing I've picked up from what you said there, Ben, is that actually the environment is constantly changing. Everything around us is constantly changing, developing in terms of how goods are stored and how Amazon works or whatever. So it's actually keeping up with that, if not trying to keep ahead of it and working out, okay, how can our business work within that ever-changing environment, constantly adapting, constantly being fleet of foot to react to what's actually happening. Again, have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, I would agree. And there is obviously a journey in obviously a product lifestyle is different to selling financial services or anything like that. But a product lifestyle going from, it does largely go from Asia to Europe, UK, US. Probably the other thing to add at this point would be, I've had a Chinese visa for a long time, so I now have, I think, a 5-year visa.
Mhm.
There is a lot to be said, and you didn't get it in COVID, but of actually going to the factory, seeing what the factory is about.
Mhm.
The bigger players do it. If you've got a team at B&Q or Wix and they have their own brand, they'll have buying teams and have people on the ground in China and all this sort of stuff. But they're very accommodating, and they want to engage with you. And when you see something firsthand yourself, it instantly verifies whether the factory is any good or not,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is a stepping stone to having good products. You want to sell good products with a low faulty rate that are safe, X, Y, and Z. And the only way really to do that is to go and see it for yourself, is to get out there. So, 6,000 miles, it's quite a trek. And the first time I went, it was there wasn't a huge amount of English signs at all in Shanghai. But we now use WeChat quite heavily, which translates very nicely. But getting under the skin of the factory, I think, really helps you on that product journey.
Yeah, and that again, that the other thing that springs to mind with that in general is do your research. whatever industry business you're in, do your research, and it could be through going to visit the factories, reading up on the products that, as you say there, what's the failure rate and those sort of things. But it's really important to do the research, and part of your research is actually going out there and seeing it and feeling it. So good, yeah, look, good share there. Thank you, Ben. And let's bring this sort of up to date now. So we talked about, perhaps the challenges when you first started, challenges as you're growing. So what about now? If you could wave a magic wand and solve one challenge right now, what would it be?
Um, Working capital is pretty tough, I would say. It's either that or general day-to-day administration. You want to be writing business and doing business rather than doing admin.
Yeah.
And to enable you to do business, you need working capital and cash to buy stock, invest in whatever you need to do. So yeah, those two, I think, time and money. It's a cliche, I suppose, but and I'd say where we are at right now, we have been self-funded through various loan and debt finance. I think as you get to a certain stage, your circle widens, and maybe then I think if you can get network with the right people, then I think equity finance to get to sort of mid-tier level enables a good idea and a good understanding of business to take it to that next level.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and it is, and I think
that was a bit broad, sorry, but
no, I get no. Look, again, great share, I think, and you've encapsulated something there. Because I always think there's three main challenges that businesses face. You've actually mentioned two of them: time and money. The third one is team. And actually, so what you quite neatly said there is actually focusing on the two things that most businesses, it's normally one, two, or all three of those things: time, team, or money. That anything a business might have as a challenge or an issue normally fits into one of those particular areas. So I think it was a great thing that you said there. And the other thing that you mentioned about the levels. Because you do with a business, you do generally go through levels, don't you? And you sort of you start off as a solopreneur, and then you grow and you build a team, and then and there's certain requirements at each level that you get. And you've just sort of said, well, okay, for to move forward, it might be equity funding or something like that. But there's various needs and requirements for a business at each level. So yeah. I think that was well highlighted as well. So and what would you say the biggest learning that you've had since you've been in business, Ben?
Learning about probably products.
Okay.
I would say there is so much product in the marketplace. You've got if you're selling product, you need to understand the product. That means how it performs, its failure rate, its instructions, its packaging, everything that goes around to it. If you are selling a product, the product needs to be as good as it possibly can be.
Okay.
That combined maybe with general business learning, I think, as I said right at the start, just that uptake, just to be able to be we've always found it ourselves to be quite adaptable and flexible. We've got an email from a trade show saying we've got a spare space tomorrow. You pack up the stand, put it in your car, and go and do a trade show.
Okay.
You get it for a good price. So I think a small business can be quite flexible like that, and it doesn't have so many sign-offs. I think that's definitely an advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I think that's quite interesting that you mentioned there about sort of product and actually to understand what the important things are about that product for the people that are purchasing them. Failure rate, packaging, whatever it may be. Because at the end of the day, you're normally in competition with somebody in anything you're selling. It's pretty unlikely that you don't have any competition.
Unless you've got patents and IPO restrictions or that sort of stuff. But then, yeah, we sell some garden shears online. Anyone can buy some garden shears and sell them and color code them or whatever. But we have created a brand and changed the packaging, improved our volumetrics with Amazon to make our cost base quite good. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, understanding the product that you said, and as you said, that the other thing that you said there was the general business learning, because I think sometimes we can forget that being a business owner, particularly when you start out, it's not just about doing the day-to-day operations of, buying and selling and those sort of things. It's actually the sales, the marketing. You mentioned earlier, if you're building a team, the
All of
HR.
that. I
Yeah,
will just backtrack slightly. I
yeah,
think
please
I
do.
think I've got a little idea that actually comes to mind,
Yeah.
and I think it's probably pertinent to lots of new business owners, certainly, and those on their journey. Um, Make the harder decisions faster.
Okay, like that. Yeah.
I think is probably rather than put them off and push them away. I'd say make the tougher ones. My sales director's been with me for ages, and he is on the other side. He likes to digest things, and he's saying, Ben, you shouldn't just take it off the cuff like this. But sometimes your raw instinct is exactly what is needed.
Again, I think that's a good share, because it's about avoiding procrastination. Look, I'm not, for me personally, and this is me personally rather than how I'm saying everybody should be. Um, but it's about collecting the information that you need and then making a decision. What too often we can do is try and get to 100% of the information that we need, which is very unlikely that we get there, and it puts off making the decision. So get
Yeah,
the majority of the
I
information.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
100%. A lot of the time, everyone talks about the 80/20 effect.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm a numbers man, in my head, you go through university and you go, 40% was graded, 50% was a pass mark.
Mhm.
You don't need to get to 100%. Maybe 60% is good enough.
Yeah.
Maybe 65% gets the job done today.
Yeah.
Is that customer happy with whatever that percentage gets you to? You don't have to be 100% for sure.
No, absolutely. So I think, yeah, and that's the same for decision making, in terms of, don't wait for perfection. If you wait for perfection, it hardly ever comes. It's like, okay, when have I got enough?
But I do follow Stephen Bartlett, and I do agree that he also likes to sweat the small things.
Yeah, yeah,
So whilst not having perfection, also I do believe that the small building blocks do create a bigger thing.
yeah. No, okay, I completely agree. There, it's like that. That's like the icing on the cake and the cherry on top, isn't it? They can create real value. I mean, I can't remember who it was that sort of said this recently, but I was oh, actually, yeah, no, I do remember. I was listening and watching a podcast where somebody was talking about a pen, and they just picked up a biro and they said, okay, how much would you pay for this biro? It's just a normal biro. And people sort of went, I don't know, 50p a pound, something like that. And then he said, well, okay, how much would you pay for this uh, if it was in a packaging? If it had a nice packaging with it, and they sort of say, well, okay, maybe £1, £52. Anyway, it carried on to, okay, so if we put this pen in a glass cabinet that had really nice lighting on it, and it was in a really plush box, that with velvet sort of covering on it, how much might you then pay for the pen? And people were saying, oh yeah, like more money, but it was the same pen. So you're absolutely right that actually sometimes those little bit extras can add that additional value on that you can get you can get people to invest more, pay more, whatever it may be, because they value them. So you're absolutely right. I like what you've highlighted there. Don't forget those things, but actually just remember that decisions can be made with only 80% of the information, using Pareto's rule that you mentioned there. Great,
Yeah,
look.
yeah, it goes back to, I suppose, as well, the learning curve. The faster you can do stuff, you need to take some shortcuts. So
Yeah.
again, it comes down to being instinctive, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Using the knowledge that you've previously learned and built up to make decisions, being confident in yourself to make the right decisions. Yeah, I think that being instinctive is important. So look, there's a question that I like to ask everyone, Ben, that that's kind enough to join me on these discussions, and that's this question: what is the best advice that you would give to an 18-year-old you? So if you could go back and speak to yourself when you were 18, what would you say?
So it's a good one. Should have perhaps prepped for this one.
That's okay.
Um,
Often what comes straight to mind is the most valuable.
yeah, no, agreed. I would say, I would say, we've gone about the time, the money. I would say, mm, struggling. I think. Um,
Is
what
there?
would I do? What would I do today? So today, what could I do differently today? I mean, I have been full circle a lot in the last few years.
Yeah.
Um, I would say probably time management.
Okay.
I'd
Like that.
say be really brutal with your time, in terms of diarising, and notes. I think
Yeah.
that, yeah,
That's a good shout. By the way, I've got a 19-year-old daughter now, well, and a 15-year-old, and I like to share these things, but that rings true when I'm thinking about my daughters and their time management and how they use their time. So I think that's a great share. And
yeah, I think my 18-year-old self, time management didn't exist at all.
no,
So
yeah,
yeah, agreed. So the faster in your 20s you can get good at being as an efficient human being as you can be, then that will set you up nice. It'll give you ultimately more time or progress you faster.
I, and I think the key thing there is that we all refer to time management, but you can't actually manage time. Time is time. You've got 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. You can't change that. You can't take an hour from the beginning of the day and take it to the end of the day. But what you can manage is yourself and how you use that time. So actually, when you think about it, it's about self-management. Okay, self-management to do the most important things and the biggest priority things and in the time that we've got.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And self-management in terms of going back to long haul travel,
Yeah.
3 days before I travel, I always change the time zone back. So I go to bed a bit earlier
Oh,
for
wow.
3 nights before I go and get up a bit earlier, just so it kind of syncs your time zone a bit.
Brilliant. I
I mean,
like
the
that.
house doesn't like me getting up at 3 in the morning when I normally get up at 5 or 6 in the morning, but that extra hour for 2 or 3 days, just when you've gone long haul and you want to maximize your day on the way out, if you feel jet lagged, it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great sort of example of um, how to be productive with your time because you're making sure that when you get to China or wherever it is that you're going, you can really use your time rather than getting jet lag and having to sleep in and those sort of things. You're saying, well, I'm trying to adapt myself to the time so I can do what I need to do when I'm there. Like that. That's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that. So, well, look, Ben, thank you very much for joining us today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and sharing more about your business, but also your journey as well. So, thank you very much.
Pleasure.